welcome to HANSA.newscast. I'm Janne Silden, and today Rob Mortimer from Fuelre4m is my guest. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, Jan. How are you?
Rob, for those who don't know you yet, you are the founder and CEO of Fuelre4m, but what is your company doing and why is it needed right now?
So what we do at Fuelre4m, the clue is in the name. We're reforming fuels. We're reforming any type of fossil fuel, making it so that we're changing the structure of the molecular structure and making the fuel split apart to make it so that when you put it into an engine, it combusts more efficiently, which is reducing the amount of emissions that are coming off if you're burning more of the fuel more completely, but also producing more power from the same fuel. A lot of people don't realize that when you're combusting fuel, that not all of the energy that you're putting in, so the fuel has its own potential energy, but what we're doing is making sure more of the fuel that you're putting in and that potential energy is turned into actual energy.
You are based in Dubai. What makes that the right place to build a fuel innovation company?
An interesting question. We didn't start off meaning to do that. I was very, very lucky that about 6 years ago, maybe just over 6 years ago, from my background in telecoms, I designed a hybrid power generator. And when we were designing it, we were trying to find ways to make it a little bit more fuel efficient. And quite by luck, somebody came to us with a yellow liquid and they said, okay, put this into the fuel and you'll be able to see that this is going to make the fuel smell better. It was as simple as it. It'll smell better and the engine will be better. We didn't know really what it was doing at the time, but then we went through a very long 6-month testing process on lots of generators to check through. And we found that he was right. The fuel did smell better, it was cleaner, and you were getting more power coming out of the engine. And so being a little bit inquisitive, we decided to see how much further we could take it and how much better we could refine it. So it wasn't really that Dubai was the right place to be, but it happened to be where we were, and it's happened to be where we were doing some testing. And but from there, the strange coincidence is that the UAE is really starting to try to drive the narrative on reducing fuel consumption, as well as going into AI and technology, which is really where my background is, to start understanding a little bit more about how fuel is combusting, and about how engines are working. But more importantly, there's a massive drive in the UAE to bring down carbon emissions and all other types of emissions, and be at the forefront of carbon trading, and doing everything that can be done to make the air cleaner. So it's quite by coincidence. I think the UAE has got some great programs that are coming through, and we're also very interested in using AI and blockchain to verify everything that we're doing. So although it's very, very simple when you're talking about a combustion engine, the complexity of proving change is quite big. Yes. So I think we're in the right place to drive with the AI and the technology and the business transformation to change one of the most oldest and basic things, which is fossil fuels going into engines.
Yeah, and as far as I know, the reform mix, that's your core solution. What exactly does it do, and who's it for? I think you already mentioned a bit about it, but is there any more details you want to add?
Yeah, so Reformix, it's a mix that we've made up that is reforming the fuels. That's how we came to the name of Reformix. And fuel
does it smell? Sorry, does it also smell good?
I wouldn't say that it smells good. It's because it's 100% natural. It's made of vegetable esters, so it doesn't smell bad. It's non-hazardous. It's non-harmful. But I wouldn't say it smells good. It smells distinct. But it makes your fuel smell better. So in terms of what Reformix does, we have different blends. So we have to look at how we target different hydrocarbon chains and different properties in each of the different types of fuel. I think I can probably say different a few more times as well, but I'm going to say no. I'll try not to say different too much. So what we do is that depending on the type of fuel, starting from crude, so we treat crude oil to make it so that it is easier to extract from the ground, easier to pump, which you need less energy to then push it through. Then we have pipeline, which is again for helping transport the fuel. Then we have refinery, which is now making it so you can extract out more of the higher value elements of the fuel. So everything we're doing, and that's upstream and downstream in fossil fuels. Everything we're doing there is trying to improve the quality of the fuel, changing it from what could be a 7.4 API up to a 19.2 API. And then from there, once we've got it through the refinery, we now have products that are starting from fuel oil, which is for vessels, for ships. Then we have diesel, jet, which is for kerosene and paraffins and for jet fuel, and all the way through to petrol. Now, they're all doing very, very similar things, but the more the fuel has been refined and treated, the more complicated it becomes to try to search out the exact path that it is that you want to change. So when we're talking about with the heavier fuels, the crudes and the fuel oil, there's a lot more to work on, so the density is a little bit different. When you go into your petrols that are heavily refined, we now need to be a little bit more specific with what it is that we're trying to change on there. But the principle is the same. We're unlocking the energy in the fuel that doesn't have the time to develop into power at the initial point of combustion. So we're increasing the primary combustion of that fuel. We're doing nothing to change the fuel. All we're doing is making it so that more of it can combust. So by doing that, we're obviously reducing all of the emissions, but we're also reducing cost. At the moment, people don't realize that only about 75% of your fuel will turn in primary combustion into some kind of energy. And what we're doing is we're trying to take that to 93%, which means obviously you have less fuel that can go into the exhaust to combust and make emissions.
So that would you say is the biggest misconception around fuel innovation in maritime today, like how you use the fuel itself, how it is works within the engine?
We find the biggest misconception starts long before that. And the biggest misconception is when you start from the engines themselves. Now, an engine manufacturer, it's the same as in the car industry. And the easiest way to explain it, that if you buy a car and you have a 400 horsepower engine, you believe that you have a 400 horsepower engine.
Yes.
Now, when you take that and you put fuel into put fuel in there, it now depends as to the grade of the fuel you've got, the quality of the fuel, as to whether you will ever get 400 horsepower. And so this is back into the shipping industry. There's a big difference between rated power and actual power coming from the fuel. And the biggest misconception we have is that people think that the fuel doesn't change the rated power. Now, you could have an engine that, let's call it a 10,000 kilowatt engine. That's the rated power on there. But the fuel that you're putting in, especially if you're using something like biofuel, or biodiesel, which has a lower energy density to begin with. Now, if you've got a lower energy density, it stands to reason that you're not going to be able to achieve the 10,000 kilowatts. You might only achieve 8,000 kilowatts. Now, what we're doing is we're trying to get people to understand that you can't look at fuel in a two-dimensional or three-dimensional view. You have to look at it in a four-dimensional. So we're adding another dimension to the engine and the shipping industry, which is now, let's look at the fuel. And not many people, although there's testing that goes on whenever a vessel is onboarding fuel, so when they're bunkering fuel, they do testing, but they're testing for the potential energy density and how the fuel might behave, or how it's behaved before when they were doing lab testing. But they're not testing for what the power conversion is, or how good the quality that fuel is, and how that's going to convert into power. So the biggest misconception is that people think that they understand fuel. They don't.
That's a very clear statement. Rob, you say that you started in telecoms, a world which is built on precision and measurable performance. How has that shaped the way you approach fuel technology?
A very good question. So I think the background in telecoms has played a massive part in being able to use telecoms and data logic to be able to understand the changes that we're making to fuel. So to start off with, we used to have to use all the technology to be able to prove that our product worked. And I have a mindset which is proving something does rather than proving it doesn't. Now, when you start going onto the ships and the vessels, we see that over time, the way that fuel consumption has been measured has gradually started to bring in more and more technology. And sometimes, if you've got the wrong basis or a wrong understanding of that technology, having more technology can be worse than having no technology. And what I mean by that is, for example, a lot of the industry is now talking about mass flow meters and also talking about torque meters. Now, with a mass flow meter, if you're using mass flow meter, you've got to understand that it's very sensitive to vibrations and to fuel changes. And so the accuracy of that isn't always 100% depending on what type of fuel that you're using. But the biggest one that we found was that there's a misconception on torque meters. And people are starting to understand that, putting on a torque meter and taking what it's telling you as power is not the whole picture, because you've also got to take into account thrust, power, fuel flow, and the engine load. And dependent on the quality of the fuel, your engine load will change for the same power. So getting out the message that putting on a torque meter, being able to read power, and thinking that you've got the picture as to what the vessel is doing is not the way to do it. And what we're trying to do now is start to come with ways where we can help with the accuracy to be able to show the differences between fuels and consumption and everything else. And this wasn't something that we wanted to get into. We wanted to show people that our product was working, and we thought it'd be quite simple because you've got all the tools and all the equipment already in place. But if it's not calibrated right, if it's not set right, if the understanding is not there on the data analytics, then you're not going to get the right answer. And one of the things that we do notice is that there's a lot more dependence on the data analytics from data analytics companies that don't necessarily understand the hardware and the fuel and the systems that they're taking that data from. So it needs something to bridge the gap in the middle, which is where we're coming in and we're saying, okay, look, let's take a look at the full fuel system. And what we're doing now is we're working with partners to put on systems that are locking down the fuel systems, so we have full visibility from the point that the fuel comes on and is bunkered all the way till it's consumed, and then into the emissions as well, all with technology. So we go back to something I love, which is the technology.
Sounds great, Rob. Thanks a lot for your insights and for sharing this new technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning into HANSA.newscast. Make sure to subscribe and join us again for more maritime insights and stories. You can also visit our homepage, HANSA.news, and sign up for our HANSA newsletter. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.